In this listening exercise, you will hear 7 pronunciation mistakes, 2 false friends, and 1 preposition error. Will you be able to identify them? Let's get started. I had always seen English as a rather boring subject because it was always the same. Present simple, past simple, present continuous, past continuous, conditionals, modals, super boring. But in my second year of university, I found out that there were some English exams, and if you passed them, you had the chance to go to a foreign country for a semester or a full course. I had 2 months to prepare for a B2 level. Honestly, I started studying because I liked the idea of living abroad. I went to the exam and guess what? I passed. So, the following year, I studied at Bournemouth University. I remember that I went to the Iceland on a Tuesday. I had always lived in a big city, and when I arrived in Bournemouth, it felt like a village because it was so small. The first 3 months were a bit complicated because it was no longer just present simple, past simple. Now I had to complete a degree with university subjects and everything was in English. I had to get used to the weather, the professors, my classmates, the accents, the lectures, the language, the study methods, doing assignments and presentations in a second language. But since I was there, I decided to prepare as best as possible, improve my English, and in the end, I had a really great time. It was one of the best experiences of my life. That said, I spent half of my savings on books, but at the university's library. I enjoyed so much that I decided to stay for the summer and work it as a waitress in a fish and chips restaurant. 1 year later, I finished my degree and I decided to do a bilingual master's degree, studying the first semester in Bournemouth and the second in France. While I was in France, one weekend I went to Switzerland and bought a lot of chocolate. In fact, the receipt was quite long, but it was worth it. And well, I got a taste for living abroad. After finishing my master's degree and dissertation, I moved to Switzerland for 6 months. After Switzerland, I decided to return to England, this time to London, where I found a job at a tour operator's office. It was another unforgettable experience. I lived there for 7 years, traveled a lot, and since 2017, I have been living in Spain. Sometimes I'm asked if I miss living in England. Well, now I have family and friends both in England and Spain, and although I miss London, what I don't miss is the weather. Since I returned to Spain, I have been teaching English, and in 2022 I specialized in helping adults pass Cambridge exams, both B2 and C1. As you can see, I'm quite fluent in English, but I still had to prepare for the B2 Cambridge exam. Not because I didn't speak English, obviously, but because I wanted to show that even if you speak the language fluently, you still have to prepare in order to pass the exam. In fact, I am actually preparing for the C1. I'm pretty sure that if I took it now, I would pass, but I don't want just to pass. I want to get the highest score I can. I want to pass with flying colors. In the B2, I scored 183 points, where the maximum is 190. With my students, I apply all the techniques and tips that I used myself to achieve the best result. So, in short, I went from seeing English as just another school subject to seeing it as a language to communicate. And I understood that Cambridge exams are a great way to improve academic English, because one thing is speaking with people on the street or in pubs, and another very different thing is making presentations for your bosses, preparing assignments, passing interviews, or writing reports. And all of that is what you learn with Cambridge exams. So, as you can see, I also had to learn that we depend on preparation and practice to succeed, no matter your level of English. If you liked this story and want to learn more about how to pass the Cambridge exams, subscribe and turn on notifications. In the next video, I'll tell you how I prepared for the B2 and what strategies I recommend to my students. Don't worry, these following videos will be in Spanish. Now, tell me, did you spot the errors? Leave me a comment. I remember that I went to the Iceland on a Tuesday. I remember that I went to the island on a Tuesday. And when I arrived in Bournemouth, it felt like a village because it was so small. It felt like a village because it was so small. But since I was there, that said, I spent half of my savings on books, but at the university's library. I enjoyed so much that I decided to stay for the summer and work it as a waitress in a fish and chips restaurant. That said, I spent half of my savings on books bought at the university's bookshop. I enjoyed it so much that I decided to stay for the summer and worked as a waitress in a fish and chips restaurant. While I was in France, one weekend I went to Switzerland and bought a lot of chocolate. In fact, the receipt was quite long. I went to Switzerland and bought a lot of chocolate. In fact, the receipt was quite long, but it was worth it. In fact, I am actually preparing for the C1. In fact, I am currently preparing for the C1. I also had to learn that we depend on preparation and practice. I also had to learn that we depend on preparation and practice to succeed, no matter your level of English. Finished.